This is for the black square exercise we are doing in class right now. I will cover the tools that you will use for this exercise, how to create and modify artboards, and finally how to save as a PDF. The first thing you're going to want to do is go to File, New. We're going to create a new document that is 6 by 6 inches. Mine is already 6 by 6 inches. You want to make sure that your units are inches and not picos or points or even pixels. Those will be far too small. You want to make sure that it is 6 by 6 inches. Click OK. And here we have our canvas with our first artboard on it. I'm going to be making 6 different compositions, so I want to create 6 different artboards. If I come up to my artboard palette, here I can create more artboards. There's a little icon on the bottom right. If you hover over it, it says New Artboard. I'm going to create 6 of these. If I zoom out, you'll see that these artboards are all next to each other, neatly placed, equidistant from one another. This is fine. It may cause a problem later on as you're creating your black squares, so you're probably going to want to move these artboards, but we'll do that in a minute. I'm going to come back to this palette and make sure that my layers palette is visible rather than the artboards, since we are done doing that. The tools that you're going to use for this exercise are your selection tool, this black arrow tool, the rectangle tool, and your type tool. We're going to be labeling these once we're done creating them. The rectangle tool is the most important one for this particular exercise because this is how you're going to make your squares. So select your rectangle tool. I'm going to zoom in onto our first artboard, and I'm going to draw a square. The way you draw a perfect square is to hold down Shift when you click and drag. It is absolutely important that you hold down Shift. It's critical that you do, because otherwise, if you try to eyeball a perfect square, you are likely not to draw a perfect square. And that could become evident in your piece. So to make it easy, just click and drag and hold down Shift to create a perfect square. So I have 4 squares here, all different sizes, but they are in fact squares, and they are all currently white with a black stroke. If I select all of these and come over here to my tool palette, you'll see that they all have a black stroke and they all have a fill of white. If I double click this fill, change the color, all of them will now have a fill of red. We actually do not want a fill of red. We would prefer a fill of black, so I'm going to double click that to bring up my color picker. Come all the way to the bottom left hand corner. You could also see your RGB values or your hexadecimal color value. All of these indicate that this is in fact black, a rich black. Click OK and bring the stroke to the foreground. We want to turn off the stroke for this exercise, and the way to do so is this icon right below that says None. If you hover over it, it's a little white box with a red slash through it. Click that and that will turn off the stroke. You have to make sure that your squares are selected in order to do this. If you have nothing selected and you change the color, nothing will be reflected on your artboard. So make sure your square is selected to make these changes, like that. Okay, so now with my squares created, I can move them into place, I can rotate them, I can scale them. If you scale, make sure you scale uniformly by holding down Shift. And I can begin creating my black square composition. You want to make sure that your artwork is contained within the artboard that you're using. If you notice, my square over here is bleeding into the second artboard. This is going to be a problem when you save this as a PDF. So the way to correct this is I'm going to lock my layer with my artwork, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to come back to the tool palette, select my artboard tool, And I'm going to click and drag to move these individual artboards away from one another. When you save as a PDF, Illustrator will know to keep all those artboards as pages, one after the other, without them being all over the place. So when you save it as a PDF, it will be a sequential document. You won't have a problem. I have my selection tool. I'm going to unlock my layer 1. So now I can create more squares and not have them get in the way of one another. And that's it.